And it's the Diamond Valley. Diamond Valley is school.
Alan Pietrasanta, Resident Additional Chair of the Sierra Business Council, and I'm so excited about this team here and the team on the other side to put together our community will for incredible, to build incredible community capacity going forward. So thank you.
Great, and now we will turn it back over to Erica Harvey in Sonora.
The director of the Economic Empowerment Team at Sierra Business Council, and I'm also the project director for the SURF program, because we are the regional convener and fiscal agent for the Eastern Sierra. And my colleagues,
Kristen York, Vice President, Sierra Business Council.
Kara Bechtel, website project manager.
and Kara is also based here in Sonora, just so everyone is aware, she is our West Side rep. And then Dana, would you mind introducing yourself really quick?
Deanna Stroud, Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development.
And Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara Hayes. I'm with Rural County Representatives of California.
And Barbara is our non-voting chair on the HRTC. And Dave?
I'm Dave Taney. I'm the executive director at Motherload Job Training. Welcome to my home today. And I also am the director for the 5-county Central Sierra Economic Development District, an EDA recognized economic development area. So wearing 2 hats.
Excellent. And then we're just going to go around the room. If you could just introduce yourself, your organization. I'll just start pointing at people.
Start at that table if you can. So that way I can pan around the room with the camera.
Oh, there you go. We're going to start at this table. All right, Robbie, we can kick us off.
Okay. Robbie Bergstrom, Tuolumne County Economic Development.
Tyson Welcome, Program Director for Ethos Youth Center and Pathway Strengthening, Program of the Alliance for Community Transformation.
Amy Frost, Deputy Director, Motherload Job Training.
Jaron Brandon, Supervisor District 5, Tuolumne County.
Frank Lashinsky, Public Sector Manager, Volcano Communications Group, and associated with a number of boards in surrounding counties.
Will Kelly, Executive Director at North Valley Labor Federation.
Tara Schiff, Economic Development Specialist with America's.
Cindy Chen, University of California, Crawford Extension.
Jacob Hawley, Operations Manager, Narcos and Visitor Center.
Steve Suderman, GoBus.
Dave Edwards, Chair for the Chamber of Commerce of Memphis County.
Sherry Risch with Calaveras Chamber of Commerce.
Sandra Chapman, Southern Sierra Miwok Chair.
Okay. Will Frank, County Administrator's Office, Tuolumne County.
Megan McCammon, Assistant County Administrator, Inyo County.
And then back.
Stan Dotson, resident Tuolumne City and Program Manager with Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center.
Richard Forrester, District 2 Supervisor, Amador County.
Barbara Hayes, Chief Economic Development Officer, RCRC.
Jared Martin, Program Director, Anthem Blue Cross.
And I'm Tom Crosby. I'm the president of the Tuolumne County Business Council and lead on one of the leads on the housing collaborative here in our region.
Rebecca, do you want to start?
Sure. Rebecca Burgess. I'm with California Natural Resources Agency, and I'm working to liaison with SURF and all of you who are interested in the resources available through the agency.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lena Tran. I currently serve as the president of Columbia College. Rosemary, excuse me, Rosemary Smallcomb, District 1, Mariposa County Supervisor.
Susan Weatherby, Interim CEO of the Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce and a small business owner in McCallum Hill.
Charles Sagerstrom, member of the Board of Directors of Sierra Business Council. I live a few blocks from here.
And then James Hanson, Center Manager for Motherload Job Training in Tuolumne.
Excellent. We're ready to go to Zoom.
Karen Dickerson, would you mind kicking us off?
Yes, I'm Karen Dickerson, and I represent Amador College Connect, a student resource center in Amador County.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hi, my name is Andrew Gardner. I'm the Career and Technical Education Director for the Amador County Unified School District in Amador County.
Perfect. Jimmy John.
Yeah, my name is Jimmy John Thompson. I am a current councilman for Temisha Shoshone Tribe. We're located in Death Valley National Park. I'm also secretary of the board for Intertribal Council California LLC.
Excellent. Michael.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Despain, Buena Vista Rancho Ridge, Chief Operations Officer and Natural Resource Director. Good morning.
Jenny.
Good morning. My name is Jenny Hatch. I'm the Executive Director of the Sierra Nevada Alliance. We work the whole Sierra, similar to Sierra Business Council.
And Kathy.
Hi, Kathy Galino, Calaveras County Economic and Community Development Director.
And other Michael, sorry about that confusion.
No worries, Michael McGuire with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, where I run the feedstock aggregation pilot program.
Zoom technical difficulties. I apologize. Let's try and move on, I think. I will make sure everyone's names are recorded.
Okay, I believe back to Sonora, if you're ready for us, Erica.
Yeah, but can the SURF Zoom team introduce themselves? Since we've got a handful of our team members on Zoom.
Oh, of course, we'd be happy to. I'll kick it off since I'm off mute. Jill Sanford, I'm SBC's Communications Director.
I'm Eric Robbins, SURF Coordinator and Planning Technician.
My name is Erica Backus. I am the Government and Community Affairs Coordinator for Sierra Business Council.
And I'm Kaylee Reynolds, Project Manager for the SURF team and Climate and Economic teams.
Excellent. Erica, would you mind putting up the slide deck on GoBiz? And now Dana is going to kick us off. A little SURF pep talk.
I am, right? So, good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me on the screen? I hope so. First and foremost, I'm really excited to be here this morning. I have saw many and heard many familiar names during the introduction phase of this. So hello to friends and colleagues over in Bishop this morning, and to many of you here this morning. First and foremost, thank you for making the trek to be here. Trans-Sierra transportation isn't easy. I know that, you all know that, so greatly appreciate your time and most importantly, your energy and commitment to this effort. I think Steve Frisch said it best this morning when he talked about this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for us here in the state of California to look at the regional needs and the regional distinctions that are throughout the state. Instead of saying, state of California, you should all do this, we want to start looking at what's unique, what's distinct about your respective areas. And the Community Economic Resilience Fund and the program that's being developed around that is intended to do that. This came about as a result of the pandemic and realization that coming out of the pandemic, recovery needed to be a little bit different than how we've done things before. So there's a significant focus around equity, quality of job development, climate resilience, and economic competitiveness as we start to look at the SURF development. You all have volunteered your time to help be a part of the guiding force and looking forward as to the vision for what you want this Eastern Sierra, Central Sierra region to look like, identifying the future opportunities that are going to be made available for you. A couple of key things I just want to share. First and foremost, this is about leveraging. This is going to be about leveraging all of the opportunities that are coming forward as a result of state and federal funding, and thinking about the work that you're going to be doing and how you're going to align your work with those funding opportunities. So you're hearing those words over and over again: leverage, alignment, vision, looking forward. But it's about what your experience is. It's about looking around and thinking about those who have not previously been at the table to help develop that vision and to help develop that forward thinking. This is about inclusivity. This is about collaboration. This is about bringing forward those who historically have been left behind and or perhaps not included. So you're going to be very inclusive about your efforts. You're going to be listening to your community I greatly appreciate the fact that you've committed this time to come in and be representatives of your region, realizing that you all have your own networks out there that you're going to bring to the table, your experience and your contacts that you're going to share. So on behalf of GoBiz, which if you're not familiar, we are the state's economic development organization. We're a first stop for international trade. We're a first stop for helping navigate the incentives that are available for the state. We have a ZEV team. We have a climate team. I want to introduce my colleague, Stephen Suderman, who is with your business development team. He's your contact for this region for those companies and businesses that are looking to navigate our state incentive programs. But GoBiz is one of 3 partners in this state effort, along with our colleague from OPR who introduced themselves, as well as our Labor and Workforce Development Agency. So imagine this, 3 state agencies collaborating on a new program in the state of California. So it's iterative. We're going to be experiencing a lot of changes, a lot of questions being asked, and we're going to try and find the answers for you. But first and foremost, this is about that holistic effort and bringing regions together, collaborate on what your future looks like. It's your plan. It's what you want to be doing. It's what you're going to know, and we're going to be here to support you. I actually get to serve as the support for this region. So I've been working with Erica and her team, and if you have questions, we're here to answer. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for your commitment. And personally, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys are going to be doing as it relates to this region and the benefits that you guys are going to bring to this table. Thank you very much for your help.
All right, we're going to get started with this little SURF overview. Everyone has a packet. If you could turn to page 4, they're double-sided. There's a graphic, what it looks like. You can follow along. Just a reminder, as questions come up, just jot them down on one of the large blank stickies, and we'll have a team member come around and post them on the wall. So the Community Economic Resilience Fund, it's designed to promote sustainable economic development regionally, while with a focus on uplifting disinvested communities. So the plan, Erica, next slide. Next slide. So the objectives, we are piloting a sustainable infrastructure. That is the HRTC. So this is something that we're not 100% sure if it's going to work or not. You guys are the pilot, you're the experiment. So we're going to find out how this works moving forward. We're focusing on building backslide, build capacity in existing organizations. We want to aggregate the existing reports and work that is already happening. So whether it's a SEDS or another, we're here to, connect all the dots, pull everything together. We do not want to start from scratch. We're not interested in recreating the wheel. And then we also want to, as I said, support regional plans and then build on existing funding mechanisms. Next slide. So in case anyone has not had a chance, I think this is the 2 pages. Let's do the governance structure. So we have our HRTC council, which is made up of 21 voting members and 1 non-voting chair. We have 3, we tried to make it as much as possible, 3 from each county. So there's equal geographic representation. I think there might still be a couple gaps that we have to fill on the HRTC, but we are almost at full capacity. And then we have our supporting 5 subcommittees. So we have an equity, climate, and labor subcommittee, a business subcommittee, and then a workforce education and training subcommittee, and then the local government subcommittee, and then our project identification subcommittee. And this as well, we tried to make, there's 7-ish on each, voting members on each subcommittee. There will most likely be additional people added as the process goes because of the residency requirement. We have a lot of people that work in this region. But we wanted voting members to be solely residents. And then the decision-making process for the implementation phase will be fairly straightforward. But right now we are in the planning phase. So the planning phase is broken up into two parts, two large deliverables. The first deliverable is meant to aggregate all the existing reports and stakeholders, and then identify gaps in the region. What are these existing projects not able to address? The second part of that is meant to actually make suggestions on how we can adaptation strategies moving forward. So we want to identify gaps, and then we're going to make suggestions. And then the implementation phase, we have actually not seen the guidelines for that yet. So, but that is expected to come out at some point this summer, maybe early fall. So we'll stay tuned for that. But right now we're taking it one day at a time and just focusing on the planning phase. Next slide. So actually, can you go back one more slide? Not getting questions yet. So because we are embarking, as Dan said, on a very new journey, this is new for everyone. It's new for the state. It's new for all the organizations that are representing the conveners and the fiscal agents. And it's also very new to the communities, although we've never had something done at this scale. So just something to keep in mind as we're going forward, we're all building the plane and flying at the same time. And we appreciate your patience. If you could turn to the very last page, we have our meeting agreements, our participation policy. So I won't read it word for word, but I will highlight some of the key points. Attendance, as should go without saying, we need people to be here in order for this to work. If you cannot be here, then we are going to ask that you have a dedicated person to replace you if something comes up. However, there's always going to be a virtual option. So if you're sick or you can't make it, you can join by Zoom. So we're going to try and make it as easy as possible. We understand that travel is difficult. There's going to be times that our staff cannot travel. As you well, Truckee Tahoe area got a lot of snow this year. We still have snow. But we're going to do the best that we can to meet in person moving forward. So communication is going to be really critical. So we are only setting like our meeting structure for every other month because we know it's such a burden for people to sit down for 2.5 hours and do something like this. On those off months, we're going to have office hours. So it'll be about an hour dedicated time where we're going to, it'll be virtual, and we're going to have staff. You don't have to, attendance is not mandatory. However, the participation stipend, attendance will be mandatory. And we're going to be using that time to really delegate, review things, ask questions. So our first big deliverable is due August 31st, coming up really quick. So our staff is in full research data collection mode. And there's going to be probably a lot of asks coming up from the HRTC and the subcommittees to review part of that deliverable, ground truth, a lot of that data that we're seeing. We're partnering with the North State and Redwood Coast on our data collection to streamline the process and make it a little bit more consistent. So if Humboldt it's Cal Poly Humboldt, if they're seeing something on the public health side that is might not be true on the ground, then we want you guys to check that. One important thing to note, and I probably don't have to say this, but just for the sake of the meeting agreements, this is meant to be a safe space for everyone to explore ideas and concepts for this project. And so we just want to make sure that we're being respectful of everyone in this space. And if you don't agree with it, then that's okay. But not everyone is going to agree, but at some point we will have to start coming to consensus on things. And then below that, we just have some of the goals, just some things to keep in mind. So if you wouldn't mind taking a pen out and signing it.
One of them did it when they came in, so I didn't know.
Oh, okay, you guys are way ahead of it. Excellent.
If you didn't know, I didn't want to read it, we just had to sign it.
Don't need to read it, just sign it. Okay, well, if you did not sign it, please go ahead, sign it, rip it out. If you already did it, Great, moving on.
And Erica, just to chime in from Zoom land, if folks are virtual, do you want them to sign it and email it to the SURF email?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so on, I believe it's so pages 7 to 13, we have a roster and we have everyone's email. So that way you know who is on your subcommittee and moving forward, if there needs to be some sort of communication or collaboration. Everyone's emails are listed. As you can see, we are still trying to fill gaps on certain subcommittees. So if you know of someone that would be an excellent fit, please feel free to email their name and contact information to our SURF email. So
my title is incorrect.
okay, excellent. Yes, and if you see a mistake, please let us know. So title, if there's an email that you would prefer, so on the sign-in sheet on the way in, there was an option to write a different email. Yeah, please make note of that and let us know. And then on page 17, we have our deliverables. It's the outline of what's being required by the state. And this is just our first deliverable. So it's a regional summary. I'm just going to go through the bullets really quick. I'll let you read it on your own if you want to dig into the weeds. We are going to provide stakeholder mapping to the region. And then the regional summary is going to consist of 3 main data parts. So the first part, which we are partnering with the North State, which is CSU Chico. It's the economy and economic development data. And then Sierra Business Council is providing the climate and environmental impact data. And then CSU Humboldt up at the Redwood Coast is going to be providing the public health data. And this is kind of the background information in academia. We call it the literature review. That's sort of setting the stage moving forward. We are also have to provide labor market analysis, industry cluster analysis, and then a SWOT analysis, which is actually in the process right now. Our partner, Elaine Cavallo and SCOG on the east side, and our project navigator, Magnolia, have already started focus groups that are helping inform the gaps on this process. It's kind of nice because the SEDS is just completing, so we're kind of rolling in to address some of the gaps that the SEDS is not able to. And then Kara is our new, as I said, west side hire, and she's going to be working very directly with Motherlode, and that process is going to start here on the west side. So just to read, this deliverable is due August 31st. So we've got about, we're going to say 2 months. It's a couple of weeks. We're going to need editing and processing time. And then I think there's a separate page that should have been provided to you, and that is the reimbursement form and information. If you have any questions on that, let us know. This form is also a pilot, so if there's something that's not working about it, we can change it for later. But your mileage and your lodging for HRTC and subcommittee members only will be reimbursed. There will also be a meeting stipend. I think you said up to 100. There's a couple things that we're still clarifying with DD. And I think we're shooting, I think it was approved. I saw an email for federal rates moving forward. But we'll have more information on that for some last minute clarifying details that came up this week. But we'll want to submit these as soon as possible after each meeting moving forward, just so our fiscal is going to have time to get through everyone's reimbursement forms. There's also a W-9 that if you want to be reimbursed, have to fill that out and submit it to us ahead of time. Okay. All right, I think we're ready for questions. Can we go on mute if anyone has?
Hello, everyone. Sonora, can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, we can hear
You
you.
mute us, James.
Can you mute Eric? Or all the Zoom people?
Mute them.
I think we just want Zoom, the speakers in each room to be muted, so Zoom can do Q&A without bothering each of the rooms.
I'm apologies, folks.
I can talk if I have a question that I put in the chat, if we're just doing it for our Zoom room right now. Is that okay? Can you hear me, Eric?
I can hear you. We're just afraid that Sonora can hear us.
Oh, I'll wait then.
The
How about we
NC
all do east side questions, we can all listen. Then we'll do west side questions, we can all listen. And then we can do Zoom questions and we can all listen.
If somebody starts talking again, we'll pipe down, but I don't, now we're unmuted, okay.
It sounded like they were gonna do east side and then west side and then.
Okay.
Okay, so where's first?
So questions from this room, I just want to make two quick clarifications. So number one, part of this first deliverable is a data analysis. And we are partnering with the North State Planning and Development Collective, which is the economic development arm of California State University at Chico, who's also doing their east side west side SEDS data, right? On the economic analysis. Cal Poly Humboldt School of Public Health is doing the public health analysis for all three of our regions. And Sierra Business Council is doing the climate analysis for all three of those regions. So that's the nature of that partnership. Second clarification in the reimbursement policy. So the reimbursement policy, it's your choice to decide if you want to apply for a reimbursement. But I think the reimbursement policy is that that is not eligible to local government that has separate budget for participation in the process, right? So, or they are paid staff members, right? So review that reimbursement policy. If you have any questions, please get back to us on that, okay? And we can clarify that. So I just want to make those two clarifications. Pam?
Will we be meeting separately as our subcommittees, or will our meetings always be in this?
So subcommittees will also be meeting separately. Yes. So each one of those subcommittees has a set of tasks assigned to it in order to get to the final products, and then all of the subcommittee work will get aggregated together through the HRTC. So, other questions?
You mentioned the SEDS alignment, so we're doing that SEDS right now, and I know that we did a pretty comprehensive SWOT analysis as a part of that. Will you be using that data too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So part of the objective here is to align all of the SURF data with the SEDS data on both the east side and the west side, because the west side is undergoing an update of the Central Sierra Economic Development District SEDS at the same time as well. Other questions?
This first regional, the first deliverable due in August. Will we have a chance to review that data before it gets submitted to whoever gets submitted to?
Yes, although I have to be honest with you, the timeline on that is going to be super tight. So this is essentially a regional, existing conditions report that aggregates data together from all 7 kind of counties and all the different regions of the Sierra. Our team is working on that right now. I'm not sure what the ETA on that is, but I would expect to have that report probably with, maybe 2 weeks of review time. So, these timelines got kind of compressed in the process.
Is there a point of contact for that? Should that be through Eleni for the east side or?
So your project navigator is always your primary point of contact. Magnolia is the queen of the east side.
Okay, so we're looking to review a lot of legal technical documents. Magnolia is the first one we talked to get access to, handle the comment process.
And she will handle the comment process or hand you off to the appropriate research person.
Okay.
Who's working on that issue, okay? Other questions?
When you're aggregating your data, Alpine County tends to get lost because we're so small. And sometimes we know from previous efforts to go from the west side to the east side, is that what comes out of these aggregated data just doesn't represent us. How do we deal with that?
I think we want you to review the data that is being included for Alpine County, make comment on that, right? Talk to our team about how we can make sure that kind of that data really accurately represents what's happening on the ground in the county. I know it's really hard when you have a small population like that, for data, but for kind of big scale data collection to capture the nuance of the community, right? So this data aggregation process is not intended to kind of bury the rural communities in other information. If there are specific points you want pulled out to represent your communities, we want you to step forward and talk to us. Perfect. Okay, that's.
And Steve, please just repeat, Zoom is listening. So if you could repeat questions as they come in.
Oh, okay.
For the good.
Yep, that'd be great. And then we also have one question that's come in from Zoom that I think we'll just have Steve, you answer. And that question's from Jenny about reimbursements.
And I can't see the question, so can you tell me what it is?
Yeah, I can just tell you. It seems amazingly generous. I just wanted to confirm. So like, even when we're here like remote today, we can still claim the $100 a day reimbursement.
I'll have to check on that, Jenny.
Okay.
I'm not positive what that
It
policy is.
seems like it from the language that you guys shared, but I just wanted to confirm.
I can answer that question, and yes, all attendees, virtual or in person, will get the $100 a day stipend. Only those who have traveled for the meeting will be reimbursed for travel and lodging costs.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
in addition to the $100 you can submit.
Correct. Yep,
Okay,
you can
that's
get reimbursed
awesome.
for all travel costs, but the $100 a day is just a stipend for your time and attendance.
Great.
Okay, but I do want to be clear about one thing for all of you in the room today. We want you in person. No, we want you in person. The quality of the conversation is better in person. So, okay.
And one other quick note, you know, we're gonna have to wrap up questions in a couple of minutes here, but please write them down either on the sheet there or on a sticky. We're gonna have another opportunity for questions later, but we do want to hold the.
All right, let's go to the west side.
Yeah.
You have speakers on the table, so put that in there.
So Steve, the West Side is actually doing their own. They have the volume
Okay.
turned down, so we can just continue doing.
Great, then Elaine.
I have a question. Thank you. In the HRTC packet, there's an inventory of who's sitting on what committee, and I noticed some of those positions are still not filled. Are you still seeking people to be sitting in those positions?
Yes, we are. So we've had I'll just be frank, due to the low population in Alpine County, we've had a difficult time filling some of the spots. I know, we're really happy. Filling
So
the
for
spots.
Zoom, can we repeat any of those side combos? That
So
was
the question, I'm sorry, the question was whether or not we were still seeking the seats that are identified as open in the booklet on whatever page it is. And the answer is yes. So we do still have some open spots on both the subcommittees and I think maybe even on the HRTC. So we are seeking additional participants on the governance committees. And then, of course, when we go public with meetings, all of the meetings will be open to the public. So each one of those committees also has essentially open enrollment for anyone who wants to participate in the committee. What we have identified in the governance structure are the voting members, right? So we wanted to make sure that we had a voting member from at least each one of the 7 counties, so that we have kind of like geographic and diversity and all that stuff that we had to get together.
And there are some of you who are unassigned to a committee. We will also figure that out as we go along.
Right.
So.
Question from Karen here on Zoom.
My question is if you can't fill the vacancies on the subcommittees, can for example, I serve on more than one subcommittee if you can't fill the vacancy so that at least there's representation from Amador County on, I think there's 2 or 3 committees, subcommittees that don't have representation at this point.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Karen. I don't know the answer to that question yet. I think our team is gonna have to confer on that and get back to you. We would rather have more people participating if we can, and I know you know that. But we want the input. So let us work on that and we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, thanks, Karen.
Yeah, I don't mean to jump the gun here because you might be talking about this a little bit, but with regard to the deliverable and the analysis of the data, I'm just kind of curious if we have input on what those data are, like which data sets you're talking about, because that's a little unclear at this point.
So the question was on the deliverables and the data reports, whether or not the committee members and the HRTC will have input on what data sets are being used to aggregate information. So the answer to that question is yes, through the data and planning committee, and then all of that information will also go through the HRTC. However, I want to be really clear. We have kind of a prescribed set of requirements in that background report, and there are only certain ways to collect some of that information, like the labor market analysis and the, right? And we actually have purchased tools to collect some of that data, like Jobs EQ to run jobs data, and Cal State has, you know, Implan and other job kind of classification software, right? I think the natural resource data is going to be a little bit trickier, right? So I think I would anticipate that the background report is going to have a set of data. And then as we move into the implementation planning, we might need to bolster that with additional data in order to actually support the recommendations around future investments, right? So there's probably going to be like a 2-stage process there. And then one final caveat on that, because our timeline got compressed. When we get to that point, like the sooner we talk about data sources, the better. So one of the first things I'll do from this meeting is start putting together a list of data sources that we're using so we can share it with you guys, so you can continuously comment on it, right?
Okay, I think
we're gonna have a short period of time.
I think we need to wrap up questions, but again, I encourage you, if you want, write it down, put it up on the board, save it for later. We're going to move on now to an activity that Erica is going to direct us in.
All right.
Like we're still, we don't have audio yet.
We're ready. We're ready. Yes.
Ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so we're going to do 2 breakout activities back to back. So I'm explaining the directions for everyone right now on Zoom and the East side. So we're going to pose 2 questions. We'll do the first one first, and then we'll do the second one. So the first question is we're going to ask you to define disinvested communities. So we're going to provide the state's definition from the SFP for this project, but we're going to ask you to elaborate on how we can customize that definition for our region. So what does disinvested communities mean on the west side? What does it mean on the east side? How can we customize this? We have a series of stickies that are on each of your tables, and we have markers and pens. You can use the regular writing pens to just brainstorm. We'll have about 2 minutes to brainstorm on the live stickies. There's one dedicated for each person. And then at the end of that, we'll have a couple minutes where on the small stickies, you're going to take a marker and you're going to write down just 1 on each sticky. You can have up to 3 themes, essentially, what was part of your brainstorm. And then our runners are going to come around. And as you're ready, you can just start holding them up. And we're going to put them on this, we're going to cluster them on this board over here. Second question we're gonna ask, we're gonna to define what does high road jobs and economies mean in our region. So this question is not specifically outlined in SFP. However, Google has the definition as Erica, next slide. So a place where leaders from government, the community and the businesses work together to identify inefficient systems and then innovate their replacements. So that'll be the second one, and we'll regroup after the first activity. So, but we'll go back. Let's go back to the disinvested community definition. Okay, so right now we have 4 bullets that define what a disinvested community is in our region. So the first bullet is that the census tract identified as disadvantaged by it's the California Environmental Protection Agency. And then there's census tracts with median household incomes at or below 80% of the statewide median income, or the median household incomes at or below the threshold designated as low income by the Department of Housing and Community Development's list of state income limits adopted pursuant to section of the California Health and Safety Code. Third bullet, high poverty area and high unemployment area as designated by the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, California Competes Tax Credit Program. And then the last one is the California Native American Tribes as defined by the Native American Heritage Commission. So that is what right now the SURF program is defining as disinvested. Disinvested is a new term, so it's okay if you've never heard it before today. What is not on here that applies to our region? So that is going to be the first question that we're going to work on. So you're going to have, again, 2 minutes for reflection on the large sticky with the lines. Then we're going to have 1 minute roughly to just start writing them down, those themes on the smaller stickies. You have up to 3, don't have to have all 3. And then our runners are going to cluster them on the poster board, and then we're going to have a discussion. See if we can come to consensus. We are not going to dig into the weeds and define it today. However, our staff will be taking back all of these notes, and we will come up with a rough sketch that we will be sending everyone follow-up information, and then we can have more discussion on fine-tuning it and editing it after this. Is everyone clear on the? Okay.
I just also add, this is where your data comes in this is very important. So these 4 definitions by the state, this is what I'm talking about, that big aggregated data, but they don't know what's happening in your neighborhood. For example, the EPA, that's Cal Screen, if you're familiar. Well, we don't have any problems in this area if you only rely on Cal Screen. Income, but what's not reflected here, things around public health, other inequities. So
economic development.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where we need your insider knowledge, what you know about your community. So we can define it for the region. That makes sense?
Yeah, I have a question. Like all these surveys and all this data is done on the people. But when it comes to the non-recognized tribes, we are not designated into in the tribal group with like the recognized tribes. So our data, isn't even on there probably.
Absolutely, and
we get left behind. We fall through the cracks, and that's where I'm finding that out. With a lot of our people and even like with our MAC board, we have to be under the umbrella of the other recognized tribes because our tribe isn't recognized. So our data doesn't even reflect.
Let's capture that. Exactly. You capture that on this. Just articulate that right here.
Okay, I think we're ready to go on to the other. And if there's any other follow-up questions, we're ready. We just had to finish up a couple thoughts.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we're all ready for you.
So For the disinvested communities definition, some of the highlights and key themes that we're seeing are, we have isolated remote communities. We have a high rate of unemployment. We have a lot of non-federally recognized tribes that are not reported in the system. We have a high population of vulnerable populations that include youth and seniors. We are disconnected, so broadband is challenging in rural communities.
Might throw cell service in there too.
Cell service?
Yeah, both broadband and cell service. We don't have those two combinations. You are. It's kidding.
Definitely. So self-service and broadband. And we don't have very much access to services, including things like childcare and transportation. We also have high levels of substance abuse in the region. There's also a high unhoused population. And then we're also seeing some public land environment. I guess that's a land management, better collaboration, communication. Yes, Dave, you want to add one thing?
I was just gonna add a caveat to the number 2, the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate really isn't that high here, but the labor participation rate has gone down since COVID.
Got it.
So we were at 49 and 50% labor pool participation rate. Now we're down around 44%. People aren't participating, and so the denominator's gotten smaller.
Interesting.
And that means the unemployment rate is actually not bad, but there's less people
Got it.
looking for jobs.
That's a great clarifying data point. Okay, so we will highlight on the second, and then we'll switch over. We'll do high roads jobs, and then we'll go to Bishop. For the high road economy and jobs, some of the trends that we're seeing, we had a lot of specific jobs that were called out as a need and also identified as opportunity for high road. So healthcare, construction, forest management, energy, technology, that manufacturing, remote, sustainable, recreation, value added wood products. Then we have training, so certificate and non-degree trainings, and then collaborate. So we have a behavior category that includes collaboration and communication. And then leverage the Yosemite National Park. And then, our infrastructure needs. So Wi-Fi, housing, and investment in injury. Then we have some characteristics. So fair wages, career pathways, prosperous businesses, worker-centric, year-round, forest economy. Some of those barriers are housing, transportation, regulation, which could be zoning, planning, and CEQA, and then insurance. So some of the state agency goals could be, barrier to prosperity and needs system approach. That resonate with everyone? Okay. All right, we're ready to switch over to Bishop.
You hear me on the other side?
Not yet. Oh, and we gotta do it manually.
We can hear you.
Oh.
Great. So we had a lot of similar findings, I think, to the West Slope. In disinvested communities, there was a lot of discussion about the point that state and federal data sources don't actually capture the nuance of the communities on the east side. A lot of discussion around both geographic isolation and kind of community isolation due to roads, infrastructure, broadband, etc. Some direction from our side to actually spend some time digging into some of these more rural communities and maybe getting one-on-one conversations going in them around what the needs are. Definitely discussion around community capacity and the point that it's really difficult to build capacity in disinvested communities, and some overt racial and ethnic inequality within the existing systems like education and housing and other things that needs to be addressed. Housing came up as a core infrastructure question and problem and need within the east side that creates kind of more disinvested communities. And then there was another really interesting kind of discussion around land ownership and land tenure, because on the east side, about 90, well, Inyo, I think it's 97%, Mono, I think it's like 94% of the land is owned by the federal government. The opportunities for using land for economic development, housing, other things are really low, and that inherently creates disinvestment, right? And disinvested communities. So, but also I think a lot of the issues that were identified in the West Slope. On the high road jobs discussion, we focused primarily on 3 or 4 issues. Number one, job quality, that in essence, the availability of industries that could create high road jobs are low, and that the number one kind of high road job industry on the east side is government. So how do we create a private sector driver for these higher road jobs, and what are the workforce education and development opportunities and workforce training opportunities to do that? If there's a low capacity on the east side for the workforce education and training that is necessary. A lot of discussion about economic diversification and identifying industries that, although they might not automatically inherently pay higher wages, create a more diverse and stable economy that creates kind of the environment for higher wages down the line. A lot of identified problems around infrastructure and not having the right infrastructure for that kind of economic development. And then once again, we came back to that land ownership and land tenure issue, like almost impossible to get away from on the east side, right? That unless the land base can be created or the land base can be used that creates good jobs, it's going to be really hard to do that. And creates access to capital. And there was a really interesting issue that came up, is because tribal land is not individually owned. It can't be used as security for loans. So access to capital for tribal economic development, super important issue for us to be looking at as part of this process. So
Steve, this one thing, we had a cluster about state definitions about disinvestment. I think you might have skipped over that.
no, I actually said it first.
Did you? Okay, so I wasn't, yes.
Yeah, so the question there was, really, it came up so strongly over here that the state definition of disinvested communities just doesn't work for our communities. So John was emphasizing that.
Yeah. When you have to drive an hour for a gallon of milk, that's inherently a disadvantage, because you just spent like $20 on gas.
All right, well, I think that wraps us up here. Back to you, Erica.
I think Zoom is going to give their report out now.
Back to you, Zoom.
So I'll go quickly. We got a lot of what both rooms have already said, but on the disinvested community side, 2 things that I did not yet hear was particularly in Inyo, there was a lot of land competition from the LA Basin, not just the federal government. And also, one person mentioned that in terms of air quality, just like the general lack of services leads to a lack of access to a decent, high quality air filtration, which leads to a lot of poor health outcomes. And on the high road question side, there was kind of a general trend of support for existing local jobs. How can we support ranchers and farmers to value add their products, living wages for skilled labor and craftspeople. There's one thing in sustainable tourism, and of course, broadband, housing, and in general, just localizing the economy, healthcare services, and finding ways to allow local contractors to get building contracts. Apparently, a lot of construction is outsourced because the local contractors just can't match the rates of the outsiders. And that's all for me.
Okay, so we're gonna go into a discussion now. So we're gonna have separate discussions. We're going to breakout rooms again. So this next question is posed to basically, who is not here that needs to be? So the SERP program is meant to incorporate as many and all voices as much as possible. We're gonna do the very best that we can to extract all participants in the communities that have not traditionally been involved in this kind of process. That is the goal, is that we want to collaborate and we want to hear from everyone. So when we look around the room, we're just going to take about 10 minutes to just have a little bit of a discussion. If there's anyone that is not sitting at the table right now, who should be. I think we're ready to go into our last break.
Last one.
Latino, racial diversity. Yeah. I'm half Hispanic.
Okay, we are ready to report back our findings. Can everyone?
You're not ready to this one. I like that math.
Sorry, last couple thoughts.
And Sonora, as you are noting those, just want to remind you that room is super well mic'd, so we can kind of hear some side conversations happening. So when Erica starts going, just want to flag that for everyone.
Okay, we're ready. So for some of the groups that we've noted of who should be in the room that currently is not, we have youth, Forest Service and BLM, other land agencies, government land agencies, employers, large and small businesses, the unhoused community, ag, local builders, community action agencies, example, Habitat for Humanity, state agencies like CAL FIRE, local, so LAD, WP, and cities and like UC landowners, transitional age and youth, more forests for logistics, trucking, etc. Housing authority, youth professionals,
Young
professionals. Thank you. Like you. Young professionals like families. And then racial diversity, for example, in this region, it's primarily Latino and tribes community is the highest non-white group on the east side and the west side. And those are all of our key themes. You want to pass it to Bishop?
Fish.
Can you hear us?
Yep, they're unmuted now. Okay, we had many of the same entities that you guys identified, so I'm just gonna pull out the ones that were in addition to what Erica identified. So on the east side, the Air Quality Management District, super important because of the impact of Owens Lake. No representation here yet from the ecumenical community or social services, which are influential communities. We also highlighted young people, but from a kind of slightly different perspective, I think, than you guys were identifying it. Very high visitor population on the east slope, including not just visitors to the region, but also absentee second homeowners not involved in the process. So the LA link is super important over here, and that's kind of unique. There's an issue around the large geography on the east side, making sure that we're getting into southeastern Inyo County. Matt would be happy to hear that, I might add. And looking at that whole link between southeastern Inyo County and then the major industries there. So the energy cluster that is developing in southern Inyo County, including geothermal and solar. And it's linked to Ridgecrest, which is technically, I think, in the Kern County region, but actually is going to have a lot of impact. So how we work across certain borders is actually kind of an interesting question, right? And then specific call out for more engagement in specific sectors of the tribal community, Indian healthcare and tribal economic development agencies, and making sure that all of the tribal entities within our region are engaged in some way. So, anything else? Okay, back to you, Erica.
Yeah. Zoom, we have a discussion.
Largely repetitive with what's already been stated. I think I heard tribal health clinics, community action agencies and nonprofits, tourism, emergency services, young populations, aging populations. So yeah, same themes, same vibe.
Excellent. So we're going to go into a questions and discussion section. We're going to do this collaboratively with the virtual world and the Bishop world. So the west side is going to start. Everyone else is going to be muted. So right now, are there any questions that are coming up? I haven't seen anyone write them down. That's impossible. There's always questions. Karen, do you want to kick us off?
First question is, what questions? Like, what about what?
About anything, about the program, about roles, the schedule. I mean, we are going to go over next steps. We are at the very end, we're going to go over the next meeting, some of the asks that you can anticipate coming up. But right now, is there just any questions that are coming up so far?
So I'm thinking of how do we engage, right? So in Western Mariposa County, we have cattle ranchers, and the chances that we're going to get one of those folks to show up here are slim and none. So, and small businesses, those folks are busy running their businesses. How do we solicit their input to ensure their voices are heard, but with minimal time on their part?
That is an excellent question. So for the people on Zoom and Bishop, if you didn't hear that, it's how can we include other voices, for example, ag and small businesses that are not included in this process. So right now on the east side, SCOG is Elaine Kabala is partnering with our East Side Project Navigator, Magnolia Barra, and they are working on conducting focus groups to collect these voices. That process has not started yet on the west side because we just hired Kara, which we are very grateful for, but that will be going on. So on the west side, so right now on the east side, they've done one tribal focus group. And then they've done one Latino Hispanic focus group, and they're working on another. So one was Mammoth focused, the next one's going to be Bishop focused. So if there are stakeholder groups such as that we need to include, and we cannot ask them to come to meetings, that is going to be a great way to capture those narratives. And then if it is possible, what we're hoping through these focus groups is if we have individuals that participate, if they could just come to one meeting, like if there's a narrative or a story or something that's directly related to a project, we'll ask them to come and just be like, hey, would you mind sharing your story to everyone to hear? So that is the plan as of right now.
So we should be thinking of likely candidates that can show up to at least one meeting.
At least one meeting. And we do have participation incentives for those people that show up. So we're doing gift cards right now. It's only $25, I know. But just to participate, I think they run like hour and a half, hasn't been too long, but just to collect as much qualitative data as we can. Yes.
One quick thought I had was in terms of addressing that particular area of need. Surveys, voice of the community type surveys, it can be pretty broad, and you could ask us to actually hand those surveys to individuals. They can jump online, fill them out, and then you're getting the data you need, responses to the questions that are, pertain to those areas.
Absolutely. Surveys are a great way to collect qualitative data quantitatively. We have been a little sensitive on the east side because they were just distributed, the said survey over there, so we didn't want to overwhelm people with too many surveys. But we are currently working on one that we're gonna send out in the next couple weeks. Our lead researcher was gonna work on that. So yes. We will keep that in mind, and when it gets sent out, we want it sent out to everyone. Jeremy, any other questions?
Yeah, what's the, so I understand this is kind of the structure that's come down to us. So we're mentioning who's not here. There's a few open positions within the various committees. What's the flexibility of actually adding any of these in? If we say, okay, we really need to have transitional age youth person, and there is no open slot that fits that, how do we handle that? And can we even adjust this membership at all?
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. So this is the proposed governance structure that went to the state agencies and was approved in our application. However, all the state agencies have been great in, acknowledging that there are going to need to be changes. It's really hard to predict something that's never been done before and, not have changes, right? So if we need to add another subcommittee, we can definitely talk about that. If we need to add more representation on the HRTC, that is definitely open for conversation. And just a clarifying note on the subcommittees, we can have as many people on those as we need. So we just have voting members set. That was kind of our priority right now. But if there are more people that we need to add to those, then maybe they can't make every single meeting. Maybe they don't live in the area, but we want them part of that subcommittee, then that is definitely available. And those meetings will be also open to the public. So if people want to listen in, they're more than welcome to do that. Yes.
As far as the schedule going forward, like a lot of people, I like to get things on my schedule far ahead of time so I don't double book. I just looked at one of the initial emails about likely the third week or the fourth week. Will we have a definite schedule at some point?
So we are currently working on the definite schedule. I will say it is challenging coordinating this many people to be able to meet on one day. We have selected a day in August to be our next in-person meeting. And it's actually going to be here at Mother Lode. We already have it on the schedule. I believe it's Thursday, August 17th. I want to say, I can refer back to my notes, and SEDS is in the morning. So we're going to follow the SEDS meeting right after. So it'll be noon to 2:30. So hopefully for the people who are doing SEDS, it's not too much to stay all day for 2 long meetings.
Central Sierra.
Yes. That Thursday.
And Erica, just quick point there that all future meetings won't be joint between the HRTC and every single subcommittee. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Central Sierra Economic Development District meets the third Thursday of the second month of this quarter.
Yes, we will make sure.
Isn't that what August 17th is?
Yeah, so we're gonna do it in the afternoon.
The third.
So-
All right, I'm sorry. I missed that.
So our staff is already gonna be here. We have a board
okay.
meeting the next day in
Excellent.
Mariposa. So we're trying to aggregate our travel. So we're not killing all this ground time. So we're gonna hit 3 birds with 1 stone that week. And then the next in-person meeting will be November. So we have a couple of dates on the calendar, but it's when the closer you get to the holidays, I think we wanted to try to do it sooner. So we can send out a doodle for that.
There will be a virtual option for the next.
There will always be a virtual option if for some reason you cannot make it in person. And remember, if you cannot make it virtual or in person, then we have to have a designated replacement option that will fill your spot from your identified stakeholder group, not a random person. Any other questions? Yes.
This might be, well, but within the subcommittees, so say something like, we're looking at like value added wood products. while there's some legislative background there, some economic background, forestry stuff, how would each of those ideas kind of be presented? You know, are we planning on these groups to, say for the government, want to bring in speakers able to kind of educate us on what's being put forward as well? Or is it only coming from the membership kind of coming in? That makes sense.
So we are planning on, and we can definitely pull in, state specialists. So as these clusters, all this data is coming in right now, it's happening currently. And we start to create, these clusters, and the HRTC agrees that these are the identified, primary clusters that we want to move forward with. Then we can definitely have specialists come in and speak on some of these issues like, biomass and, woody byproducts. So, yes.
Is there going to be some kind of integration with the K-16 work, because they're building career pathways to address issues? So maybe if we can kind of unite and align efforts for a sustainable, because they'll be training up the youth.
I think that is something it's slightly different, but yes, we can definitely make note of that, and we can talk about that moving forward.
It's the same 7-county region, and workforce development and career pathway development will be a critical component of what we're doing here. So I think those need to be graded, and like Amy suggested, those need to be graded pretty tightly.
Could I add to that? Because Columbia College is the fiscal agent for that. But with the two different grants, R is really focused on education pathway. So we really have to put students in the pathway for healthcare, IT, and education. So I see that this part will be the continue of us building that for the region, because we have to train the teacher to teach STEM. Then we have to put all the curriculum for nursing, all that in. And I think this serves as a great next step for the development of the partnership, the workforce, right? Because it's very clear for us to only can pick those pathways. So pretty much, I think it's a continual process. But we will let you know once the region, our K-16 built out the pathway. So that's what we're working right now.
Okay, yeah.
Eastside would like to acknowledge some questions, just letting you know.
Oh, okay. Let's just really briefly, we'll check in with the east side. How?
If we're unmuted. Great, we're ready.
All right, questions?
Yeah, so questions here, but right before we get to the questions, I want to go back to something that was part of the original discussion around SURF. That for some of the goals and objectives, we might need a west slope strategy and an east slope strategy, right? So the final document is going to respect those geographic differences across the 7-county region, because there are some issues that are fundamentally different because of the massif of the Sierra Nevada. Like, for example, the east side looks more to Los Angeles and the west slope looks more to the Central Valley and the Bay Area, right?
Not all these sites.
Not all of it. Some of it looks to the Tahoe Basin and Reno.
Yeah.
Right? So we recognize the need for sub-regional strategies as well in this process. Okay. And I think that's probably true around some of the things that Dr. Tran was talking about around workforce education and training as well. So, but with that, let's open it to questions from the east side. Come on, guys.
I guess my question was, do we need to continue to meet like this, or can we meet separately? Yeah, it's kind of confusing and.
Let's put that up on the ranch, and I think we'll have a good debrief after this meeting on how this works.
We love our
everything.
friends and colleagues on the west side. We hope they love us back.
Yeah.
But, you know.
But we'd also like to have a meeting in person with folks from both sides of the mountains.
I'm envisioning a big party. In Hawaii. Without drinks or food or, yes, or anything. But questions from the east side.
So I don't actually have a question, just a comment, and a suggestion. If we can schedule out the meetings as far into the future as possible, I think everybody in this room and in virtual land are really, really busy, and we just want to make sure that we can attend as many as possible. So
Yeah, I think that was Richard Forster's point on
Awesome,
the west
yeah.
side too, and we'll get, I think we'll come up with a process to do that for all you guys now, whether it's a huge doodle poll, or I'm not sure what it'll be, but we'll come up with a process to schedule out further in advance.
That'd be awesome, thank you.
Other questions?
I was just gonna make one more comment when we're talking about the focus groups, is like the people who are not in the room, maybe specifically creating those groups or times, you know, you can go to the elders center or the community centers like that, youth councils or any youth kind of groups, you know, versus inviting them to this meeting.
Yes.
And just spending some individual time with those groups.
Can meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions on the side?
I had a comment on the list of people who may or not be useful to this group. Like, how do we get to the remote workers? You know, people who come here and depend on certain infrastructure to be in place, are they an economic boom, bring to our community? I mean, but to know more about that.
Yeah, so this is
the
what I
question,
wanted.
just the comment was about remote workers and how we access people who aren't living here full time.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so that's a really good question, because it's a problem that comes up in almost every public engagement process, right? So, simultaneously with us being involved in managing this SURF project, there are also 12 other SURF projects around the state. And the leaders of those have been convening to talk about these, like just these sorts of problems or issues. It's like our community of practice to bring tough issues forward and find out what solutions people have. I think we could bring that to that community of practice and ask that question, because they've got to be going through the same problem in other regions of the state. Like 25% of all Bay Area workers are remote, right? Like, think about that. So, but I think looking at the application of technology, like we might need an advertising process in order to get to those remote workers who are not, you know, like reading the local paper or listening to the Sierra Wave, you know, like with all due respect, there are not that many like media outlets here to try to bring people in from a bigger funnel, right? So we might have to come up with a separate strategy for
The
that.
social media, I mean, I don't know, like you said, where do those people who live, you know, do they connect with where they work in remotely, or do they
Right.
connect to where they are actually sitting at a computer?
And to be honest, their primary community connection is probably outdoor activities and recreation, right?
Well, I was gonna say, that's something we're seeing in Mammoth is the fan life question that's been integrated now into our housing stuff that we're working on, this is part of our Housing Now program. But also the latest iteration of the ski bum. It is not someone working 8 jobs, it is someone with a 5 or 6 figure gig in a remote place who's living in our community, who's living that lifestyle. And I think I'm not sure about the west side with digital 395, that's one thing we didn't talk about up here.
Yeah,
We should put that on a list somewhere.
we should.
Because it's
Leveraging digital 395. For those on the west side that don't know about this, the east side has one of the fastest broadband backbones in the state. So
that combined with the air service that we're all working in here, that's another thing. That remote work technology confluence is something that's gonna be probably a unique set of challenges for the east side.
All right, I think, and with that, I think we probably need to wrap it up here and turn it back over to Erica for next steps.
Okay. So just a couple next step / action items. We will be sending out follow-up material via email in the next week. So there'll be all the questions and answers that have been asked on Zoom, and both locations will be recorded into a Q&A, so that way you can go back and refer to it. And then we'll also have it, we talked about putting it on our shared drive, so anytime there's something that comes up, you can always refer to the Q&A. So our August meeting date and location, as I said previously, is going to be here on 17th, the third Thursday. It's right after the Central Sierra says at noon. We will also have some sort of food, drink for you guys that will be available. And then in between, so we're going to have our first office hour. So on the off months that we're not meeting in person, we'll have our virtual meeting. And we'll be sending out information on that. And then there'll also be probably asks for certain subcommittees and HRTC members on that, what our research team and our writing team needs for that first deliverable. So if we need the business and workforce committee to review something, then expect that. So, yes.
Is the meeting on August 17th, is that a combined meeting like what we're doing today, or is it just?
Yeah, it'll be everyone. Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask on Zoom? I have the same kind of question of confusion. Because in the packet, it says like the subcommittees are meeting every other month, the same month as the HRTC team, like voting members. But then you're saying that in August, like everyone here today, all subcommittee and voting members are meeting in person in August in Sonora. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so because of our expedited timeline and our need to get this big first deliverable out very quickly, I think the August meeting, since it's going to be an in-person opportunity, we have a few things that we really need to hash out as a group before we submit that. That would be a good opportunity to do that all together. Moving forward, we definitely have separate subcommittee meetings where it would be an opportunity to dive into the weeds much more on some of these issues. And then what will happen is we'll report these findings back to the HRTC. Does that clarify your question, Jenny?
Yeah, like how often in general do you guys envision like all of us in person?
As well, it's set for every other month. However, as we are all well aware in the Sierra, sometimes we will not be able to travel. So
Okay, so we're meeting every other month in person and then also that month as a subcommittee to work on our subcommittee items virtually. Okay.
yes, the subcommittee meetings will all be virtual. But yes, I think we can fully expect in January, February, potentially March, that no one's going to be traveling. But fingers crossed that we don't get a drought year.
That's for sure. I hope.
So. Any other questions from Zoom on the action items or east side? Okay, so as I said, our first priority, our main priority right now is getting this first deliverable out. So we are identifying gaps in the region and we are reporting those gaps back to the state. And that is going to be setting us up basically for this entire process. So we have, I think, both locations. We have lunch that is here and it's ready to be provided. So you're welcome to stay and eat in here, I think, for a little bit, and then we have to start clearing out. Or you can take it with you. If you have other questions and want to hang back, we have our staff will be hanging around for a little while. And yeah, we really appreciate you all for coming out. Appreciate your time and your travel. So thank you. And I'm very excited for what's to come in the process, that the journey that we are embarking on. You know, as Dana said, this is kind of the first time that something like this has really happened at this scale. And it's a huge opportunity for the rural regions to come together across the state, because we're working collaboratively, but then also, you know, the 7 counties within this region to come together to start addressing some of these really hard issues that we haven't had capacity for. So, thank you.
Okay, next time on the West Slope, we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone on Zoom.
So actually, I do have one other quick question. So I saw, there was a post not long ago about like some projects, about $40 million that was already allocated at the SURF funding, right?
Yeah.
So are these were projects?
So it's a separate process. It was that within the enacting legislation for SURF by the state. It was Steve, do you want to?
So they carved out $50 million actually of the original SURF $600 million for what they were calling economic development pilot projects. And they processed them under a separate kind of set of grant guidelines.
So we're not
So-
behind.
So we are not behind, although I do want to point out, there were a couple of issues with that process that we're still trying to work through. So there were a couple of applications from this 7-county region that did not make it through that process because they didn't hit the threshold requirements for getting grant funding, right? One of the threshold requirements, by the way, was a SEDS that was within 5 years of being done, right? So the West Slope SEDS was 5 years and 9 months old. And they disqualified the projects on the West Slope because the SEDS was 9 months over comprehensive economic development strategy. So,
There's also a separate tribal process, by the way.
yes. Okay, so yeah, let's go over the other two processes. So there's also a 25 million pot of funding for tribal entities.
Just
To
really
apply
quick,
to-
you do not need to give me your paperwork. Fill out paperwork.
Okay, so there's a separate $25 million pot of funding for tribal entities in order to do kind of CERT engagement and or economic development projects. The RFP for that has not been released yet. And then finally, the implementation funding, the state is in the process of trying to figure out how they're gonna deploy the remaining implementation funding. And right now, the proposal on the table that they're working through is that each one of the 13 CERT regions is gonna get a pot of funding for capacity, a pot of funding for ongoing convening, and kind of implementation planning work.
And we lost the east side, so. If any of you virtual attendees are actually still listening to us, we very much appreciate you coming. And we will be sending out calendar invitations for all follow-up meetings as soon as possible. So thank you again, and we hope you have a great weekend.